Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. I hope everyone is well. I hope you guys are doing good. Inshallah, I hope Ramadan was good for everyone as well. Inshallah, it's been a while since we've done a live. So, inshallah, the objective today is to sort of share some thoughts on atheism or beyond atheism, inshallah. And I'll sort of explain what I mean about that in a little while, inshallah. And just to do a Q&A with you guys, inshallah. So, if you have any questions, I know some of you guys have been asking me some questions on the comment or community section on this channel. So if you have any questions, dawah related questions, you're more than welcome to ask, inshallah. So yeah, walaikum salam, Sarah B, Mr. X, and everyone else that's joining. So I wanted to quickly touch upon, not long, inshallah, but just to quickly touch upon, you know, what's recently been happening on YouTube as far as the online YouTube atheist community. The hardline naturalists, atheists, seem to have been a little bit more quiet than before. And it seems like this sort of transitioning slowly away from that sort of typical or classical naturalism that you see people like Richard Dawkins promoting, the type of atheism that they push. And people are moving more towards other types of, views which aren't really, they're not delving into or moving on to, you know, anything, sort of any view that regards, something beyond the physical, but still they're sort of moving away from that sort of traditional perspective. I've been seeing many more videos by atheists online interviewing people who aren't atheists, aren't religious either, don't believe in God, but they hold different views like idealism. And that's becoming quite popular among some people today as well, which is this type of outlook where, they believe that everything is mind, basically, that reality, the natural world around us is at its core mind, and that there is a unified mind. And there's many different perspectives and many other ways of looking at this, but they believe that there is a universal mind. They won't call it God, still they won't call it, they won't refer to it as God, a personal creator, but they will still say that it's still natural, but the true state of what's there is not just material, it's mind. And what we see and what we perceive, isn't the true form of things. It's just what we take in, what we can pick up on. So when you see a bottle, you see a pen, and as you see it, in the real state of affairs, it's not really like that. It's something else, but that's what we see. And there's all this sort of these new ideas that people are sort of veering towards, which I find really interesting. And obviously, it's been a long time coming since the atheists and the naturalists realized that, their type of old school naturalism, the type that Richard Dawkins has been pushing for many decades, is becoming out of fashion. It doesn't satisfy human beings on many different levels. So, I thought that was really interesting. And then I believe we're gonna see this much more as we go on over the next, 5 years, maybe next couple of years even, where, people are going to be sort of moving on to these type of new ideologies and new views, at the same time still rejecting God, a personal creator. But it's just interesting, it just shows how unstable all of these ideologies and views are, and that without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nothing really makes sense. And whatever view you hold on to, you ascribe to, is going to be at some level flawed, and it's not going to satisfy you. It's not going to add up. So anyway, more so than this, inshallah, I'd really want to engage with your questions. If you have any questions on atheism, or dawah related questions, inshallah, it'd be really good to get into those. Assalamu alaikum to everyone that's joined. Zaid, Diaz, DZ, assalamu alaikum. Okay, I'm just flicking through your questions. I'm doing this on my phone, so just bear with me, inshallah. Yeah, alhamdulillah, I'm well. Muhammad Hadib, I hope you're well as well, bro. I hope Ramadan was good, inshallah. It'll be good if you want to join, inshallah. Let me know, and I will share the, where is it? Let's see, share the join link Forgotten how to use this. Subhanallah. Guessed. Okay. So I'm going to share the link, inshallah, in the comments. See if I can comment. All right, it's not letting me. Subhanallah. There we go. So I'm going to share the link to join. Brother Muhammad Hadib, if you are free or if you can, definitely come on, inshallah. Dawkins on ads. Yeah, I haven't seen him myself, but he's probably, trying to become relevant again, I guess. He's probably noticing that, his popularity is slowly dwindling. Walaikum salam to everyone that said salam. So Khalid says, I think they are trying to just push religion away by pointing out different ideologies. Yeah, look, they're trying to make, the best of what they have to work with, and obviously it's becoming ever more apparent that naturalism just doesn't give human beings answers. It doesn't answer anything. It doesn't help in any real way. It's easy to, push an idea and say, oh, look, I don't believe in anything. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in a creator. I believe all that exists is, matter. And that's it. It's easy to claim such things, but what does that mean? Because like I've said before, every look, let's put it this way: every ideology or worldview you hold on to, and every human being, can't escape this. Everyone has to have a perspective, has to have a worldview. Every worldview has implications. So whatever worldview you ascribe to, or you associate with, or you claim, it has implications. You can't escape that. Islam has implications. Every ideology has implications. Naturalism, therefore, too, has implications, and their implications are very, very severe in some regards when it comes to our human condition. They have zero answers, from the perspective of morals, meaning, and all of these things. So obviously, they're going to jump from one camp to the other, in the hope that they'll find answers without ever having to jump towards, religion or the belief in God, a personal being. And that's what we see people doing. They're hopping around, trying to make the best of their situation at the moment. Yes, a good point Zaid made. He says, when pushing atheists on their beliefs, I find they tend to resort to "we don't know yet," and assume it will be explained by science in time. Yeah, and this is another misconception as well, because science doesn't claim the method itself. There's never a claim that's made by, or who would make the claim. The method can't speak, but science does not deal with certain realms. Science has a scope. It's a tool. It's a method that we have, that we've developed to help us understand the world that we live in, the material world that we live in. Let me be specific: the material, physical world that we live in, and that's it. Therefore, when it comes to questions of morality, meaning, ethics, virtues, all of these things are beyond the scope of science. I know some people, obviously, you have people like Harris and so on and so forth, who have tried to somehow fudge the gap, but they're not going to be able to, because it's beyond the scope of science. Science will never be able to. And again, going back to the point, science, and they normally use science, right? It's almost that last straw that they can clutch onto and try to claim as if science belongs to the naturalists or the atheists. It doesn't. The only similarity, if you like, or the only sort of corroboration is, well, science deals with the material, the physical world, and atheists claim to believe in only the material and the physical. Science deals with answering the how, and this is why it appeals to them, and this is why they try to sort of really hold on to it and grasp it. But it's not going to help them in answering those questions about meaning and morality and all of these things. It can't. It's beyond the scope of science. So this is why, going back to the point, that Zaid made is when they say to you, oh, don't worry, science, we just don't know yet. Science will eventually answer this particular question or tell us about morals and ethics and meaning and all of this stuff. It's never going to happen. It's not a matter of time. It's just never going to happen because it's beyond science. And this is something we should sort of remind them of as well, inshallah. Mr. X says is playing. I don't know, bro. The questions of haram and halal are beyond my pay grade, if you like, bro, inshallah. So I am not the right person to ask those questions. So Zaid says, what to do at this point? Hopefully I've answered the question, Zaid, how you can sort of address them when they say, science will eventually tell us, we'll eventually find out. We just haven't figured it out. Just tell them it's beyond it's like saying, I don't know, let me think of an analogy. I don't know. It's like saying, I don't know. Look, take this for example. It's like saying this bottle of water would eventually, not now, we haven't figured it out, but this bottle of water will eventually resolve my back pain. It's not going to happen because it's beyond the scope of the bottle to resolve my back pain. It's not. It's that medicine does, right? So it's not the bottle of water that's going to help you do that. I know it's a bad analogy, but you get the point. Science has a scope, it has a sphere, and it can't, and it has to stick to that. No matter if it's within 100 years or 1,000 years, it can never go beyond what its limits are. And that's something we need to highlight to them, inshallah. So hopefully that answers the question, Zaid. So Gon says, Sam Harris, atheism which still holds spirituality and a religion without God as important is what will be the new norm. Yeah, and you'll see this. We will see this, and you'll see this a lot. And there's recently been a few books that have been written on this topic as well about, spirituality on atheism. I think Harris was the one of the first to start off this trend, where what they're pushing is this idea that you can be spiritual and spiritually fulfilled in the absence of religion, in the absence of God, on atheism, on naturalism. And it beats me as to how they bridge that gap, and what does spirituality even mean, on atheism and naturalism, unless they redefine spirituality and they say it's just, it's just a state of the brain, a certain feeling, and if they want to reduce it down to that, then well, yeah, okay, they can have that. But traditionally, historically, when you think, or even just the word spiritual or spirituality, when we think of the concept, it has, this metaphysical ring to it in a way where it's to do with something beyond the physical, right? It's to do with the soul, the heart, etc. But these concepts, these ideas, soul, heart, beyond the physical heart which is within us, these concepts are the very concepts that hardline naturalists and atheists reject. So I don't see how they can make sense of spirituality in the traditional sense unless they redefine what they mean by spirituality, and then they can have that. But then it's not really what we mean by spirituality and that thing that really fulfills us as human beings. So yeah, it's again, but it's interesting because Harris has the insight, at least, to understand that people are deeply spiritual, and you can't run away from this. We need spiritual fulfillment as human beings. And one of the crises, if you like, of this age is that we don't have that. People don't have that. And it makes sense as to why they don't have that, because, well, people have a sort of type of materialistic outlook anyway. It's all about matter, what's in front of us, what's physical, and we've lost all sense of, what the human being really is and the essence of the human being, which is the soul. And when you deny that, well, you deny any means, you close that door to spiritual fulfillment. So it's going to be a problem. And he's noticed that there's a problem, and he's trying to bridge that gap for atheists, maybe in the hope that they don't leave atheism or naturalism, because that desire to be spiritually fulfilled is deep, and it's heavy. People need spiritual fulfillment. Naturalism, atheism is not going to give that to them. So they're not gonna. They're obviously gonna look for alternatives. And Harris obviously is trying to prevent people from going elsewhere. Although people, like I said in the beginning, are starting to do that. They're starting to leave the traditional type of naturalism, or the Dawkinian, if you like, type of naturalism, and they're moving towards other types of isms and ideologies which have their own issues and problems. Okay, let me just. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Hello, Abi. Jazakallah khair. Okay, brilliant. Okay, this is good. This is a good question. Minhaz Dawa says, how to have certainty in Islam. It's a very big question, bro or sister. But just to highlight a few things in regards to this, and remember, this is, so I'm talking from personal experience first and foremost, because this is something, as far as certainty is concerned, it's something we all have at times struggled with, or gone through, or dealt with. But I think the very first thing we need to do, brothers and sisters, is to realize or try to break free from the indoctrination we've all received. And this indoctrination I speak about is specifically related to the way the world that we've been born into has shaped our minds, the way we see things, the way we understand things, and the way we understand truth, and the way we understand the roots to truth and knowledge. Whoever we are, we've gone. If you have gone through, and I'm not saying this is a good or bad thing right now, but I'm just stating the obvious, which is if you have gone through modern education, then knowingly or unknowingly, we have acquired a certain way of thinking. And that can lead to issues and problems if we don't get to the root of that and resolve that. And what I mean by this, if I'm being, without being too, to be a bit more clear about this, what I'm saying is we're taught to think in a very secular way through education, right? So seeing is believing. Even though your teacher may not have sat you down in school and said, look, this is how you understand the world and this is how you come to truth. It's subtly injected into the curriculum and the way we learn and as we grow. Seeing is believing. For us to be convinced of something, for us to believe in something, it has to be something we can observe, something we can touch, something we can smell, something we can taste, something we can engage with. And that thing we can be certain of. That's the thing we can be certain of. Anything else? Well, no, because we're not taught that there's many routes to knowledge. There's many ways of knowing, especially when it comes to the inner world of the human being, the heart, the soul, the fitra. All of these things are non-existent from a modern perspective. They don't exist. They're just, ancient fables. They're things that the ancient people would speak of, and the modern mind, that this progressive modern mind has apparently, quote unquote, figured everything out and understands everything. To that mind, these things are just silly, right? But we have to remind ourselves that, look, this idea or these ideas which have only come into existence, or this way of looking at the world, is no more than maybe, subhanAllah, we have a guest. I'm going to add the brother or sister for the question, inshallah, in a second. But it's not older than maybe a century, 2 centuries, a couple of centuries, since maybe the 17th, 18th century, after the Enlightenment. And before that, for the majority of history, people understood that there's many ways to understanding things, that there are other truths, that there is a nature. And this is only from an Islamic perspective. The other people understood this. Other people understood that human beings have a nature. They have an essence. There are certain things that are intrinsic, innate, morals being one of them, a basic understanding of right and wrong. And Allah acknowledges this in the Quran, in Surah Shams. Allah says that He gave us, He gave us an understanding of the good and the bad of ourselves. So it's there within us. It's within our nature. So we need to understand that there's many routes to knowledge. And when it comes to certainty in Allah, and what He has given us, sure, there's arguments. We have arguments and rational reasons and all of this, and that may satisfy a few, but that's not what we should peg our conviction. Because it's a very superficial way of coming to belief in Allah. We have to realize that it's first and foremost we have the fitrah. Allah created every single human being upon the fitrah, and it's within the fitrah that the knowledge of Allah resides. That Allah exists and that He deserves worship is already there. It's a part of our nature as human beings, our fitrah. All we're doing is recollecting. We're recalling this. It's dormant. It's within us. But when we go maybe listen to an argument for the existence of God or have an experience in the world, all it does is it awakens the truth within that Allah has already put within us, right? So that yaqeen, that certainty, in a way, it's already there. It's about bringing it to the surface. And how do you do that? Okay, for some people, it may be rational arguments. For others, it may not be rational arguments. For others, it may just be as simple as connecting with Allah, doing the things that Allah has outlined for us, such as the salah, the prayer, the daily prayers that we make. That is a powerful means of awakening that truth within, is by connecting with Allah. I heard there was a sheikh on one of Hamza's live streams a few weeks ago during Ramadan, and he made a very beautiful point. He said he gave the example of mangoes, yeah, and it's mango season, or going to be mango season soon, I think. He made a beautiful point. He said, look, once you taste the mango, it's reality, right? Mango is sweet. You don't need to be convinced otherwise. Whether you don't. Once you've tasted it, if someone comes to you and says mangoes aren't sweet, or someone comes to you and says mangoes are sweet, it's you don't need that, because you have actually tasted it yourself. And this is what we need to do when it comes to Islam. We need to taste it for ourselves. Once you've tasted the truth of Islam, certainty is inshallah there. You don't need to worry about attaining it by external means and arguments and so on and so forth. Dr. Israr Ahmed made a very profound point. He said, imagine for a second if you've never tasted sugar, right? So you've never put sugar in your mouth, and therefore you don't know sugar is sweet. He made a very similar point. And he said, someone can come to you and they can convince you to a great degree that sugar is sweet. They can give you arguments and whatever the case may be. And they may convince you sugar is sweet, but that conviction you have based on their arguments and their reasoning, is that conviction on the same level of conviction as you having tasted sugar for yourself? Once you taste sugar for yourself, you know it's sweet. And that's the essence here, because Islam, it's a practice, right? It's something we need to do. It's something we need to act upon. It's when we start living by Islam and start even just doing the basic things like praying, establishing the prayer 5 times a day properly, that certainty will come. Don't try. If you think certainty in Allah and Islam is going to come via external means through argumentation, well, we've got another thing coming then. They may be supplementary, but they're not the root. So we need to. I think that's one of the things I would say is and this is something Imam al-Ghazali did as well. He, after his second crisis, and this guy, subhanAllah, he was one of the greatest minds. He was a genius. He had all the arguments, he had all the reasoning, he had all of he had gone through the philosophy and all of this type of stuff. But after the second crisis, what led him to his conviction and certainty when he left was his adherence to the Quran and Sunnah, his practice of the Deen. That's what led to his conviction and certainty, and that's what we need to do as well. And we have to sort of break through that door, that locked door, which because what we're taught is to lock the door and throw away the key to anything beyond the material, and that seeing is believing type of mindset. We have to break free from this and look beyond this, inshallah. And that's the way to certainty, inshallah. And obviously Allah guides who He wills, but and Allah will guide those that actually make the sincere effort to try and seek Allah and to seek the truth and to draw closer to Allah and to have this desire to want to attain certainty in these truths, inshallah. Okay. Tell us. So when they say science will tell us, isn't it? Yeah, it is a type of blind faith. It's based on ignorance as well of what science is. So they have faith in a particular method that they are ignorant of, they don't understand fully. And so it's compounded ignorance from this perspective, because they are putting faith in a method that they don't understand, and the limits of which they don't understand. Okay, let's see. So someone asked, Basin says, someone asked me science and philosophy with evidence, but theology don't have evidence. Please reply. Yeah, so this is the thing. Again, what do they mean by evidence? What most atheists mean when they ask you for evidence, or what they're asking for, is give me some sort of rational, logical argument, philosophical argument, or more so than this, give me some sort of physical proof, tangible, like something I can see, touch, and taste for myself. But what they fail to realize, that not all things which are true can be seen, touched, and tasted in a way that we would want to, as far as the physical world is concerned. Allah is not, he's not a part of his, he's not physical. Allah is not, a part of his physical creation. He's beyond his creation. He's unlike anything that exists, anything that he created. So how can you now assume, when the atheist says, give me proof for God, and if they're assuming this type of proof is physical proof, or they're assuming God could be put in a test tube, and measured and weighed, it doesn't work like that. The question itself is flawed fundamentally. There's many routes to knowledge. So hopefully what we discussed earlier answers the second part of the question, or a part of the question, which is, that they need to realize that, science isn't the only way to truth. And the only type of proof isn't empirical proof, or philosophical argumentation. There's much more than this, subhanAllah. And they need to start appreciating this. Otherwise, they will never, they can't move from their position. They will never find their way. Okay. Sorry, guys, I just skipped some questions, I think. Which is a good point. Arsaf, I think, makes, they say, atheists, why do many atheists believe eventually we will become masters of the universe and beyond? They will never want to admit that human has limitations. It's because they want to be gods themselves. They have a god complex. They want to be their own gods. And to a degree, they already acknowledge this and worship themselves, because they do what they want to do. But they don't want to stop there. They want to be able to control everything and understand everything. Because it's human nature to want to worship. So when they don't worship Allah, they worship something else. And what people decide to do today is worship themselves. They want to be their own gods. And and not only this, they want to be able to control everything and rule everything, which is crazy, subhanAllah, if you think about it. But this is what happens when you turn away from remembering Allah. Don't be like those who forgot Allah and Allah made them forget themselves. Assalamu alaikum, Sabur. How are you, bro? So this is it. This is why they're doing this. Does it mean certain of me? Okay, what I'm gonna do, guys, inshallah, I'm gonna take my computer. Just bear with me. See if I can go there. I don't want to disrupt Brother Sabur as well. While we're at it. Okay. So Beehive Pattern says, I don't get, let's put the light on here. So Beehive Pattern says, I don't get it. All right. I don't get it. Have certainty. Does it mean we are uncertain of being? I don't get the question, Beehive Pattern. Maybe you want to repeat the question again, inshallah. Any tips for productivity and hope and progression? I don't know what you mean. I don't know exactly what you mean by this question. Productivity, if you let me know what you mean, E dot. If you're talking about productivity as far as yourself and things. Let me know what you mean by that question, inshallah. Okay. So Beehive Pattern says perhaps the evil problem doesn't do anything with God's existence. It doesn't. It really doesn't. I mean, just because you have this quote unquote problem of evil, it doesn't mean God doesn't exist. The most they can say is they can question the nature of God, right? That's all they can do. They can't assume God doesn't exist. It doesn't logically follow just because there's evil and suffering in the world. Um, and it's interesting because the way I would turn it, and I've been thinking about this recently, is that the problem of evil has only really become a problem since people have turned away from God. Because historically, if you look at it, evil and suffering weren't seen as a problem per se, right? They were seen as a predicament, something difficult, a difficult aspect of life, our existence, but one which was in some way tied to our ultimate purpose. All right, so they saw it as a part of God's plan, whether they were Christian or Muslim. It's only once people started to move away from Christianity, Islam, religion, become more secular in their outlook, that evil and suffering became a real problem. It's really interesting because, again, going back to the Enlightenment, one of the ideas was progress, right? They wanted to progress from a worldly perspective. They wanted to turn, in a way, they wanted to make this world into paradise, right? That's what they wanted. They wanted paradise on earth. It was all about progress, worldly material progress. Now, if that's your vision, if that's your purpose, then evil and suffering are really problems, right? If you think about it, because they are roadblocks. They prevent you from your progress, right? And they have no, from their perspective, no intrinsic meaning. So evil and suffering become a quote unquote problem. But it wasn't the case, and it isn't the case for Muslims. And this is why when atheists or someone comes to you and says problem of evil, you know, we need to highlight to them that it's really a problem for you. It's not a problem for Islam. It's a problem for you because you have a certain perspective on reality, which is false. When you look at the world and reality for what it really is, then you see evil and suffering have a role to play. And and Allah says in the Quran, He created life and death as a test, to see which of us is best in deeds or in action, to make known who are honest and truthful and who aren't. And it's a part and parcel of this life. So yeah, that's some thoughts on evil and suffering. Okay. So, someone asked me my opinion on Palestine. Brothers and sisters, all I would say is may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for our brothers and sisters across the world who are being oppressed, who are suffering, who are going through some really, really difficult times. SubhanAllah, I mean, wherever you look, whether it's China, Palestine, India, wherever you look, brothers and sisters, SubhanAllah, the Muslims are being persecuted and tortured, and SubhanAllah, may Allah make it easy for all of us. And it's a point of reflection for all of us. May Allah alleviate all of these trials and tribulations from us. But it's a point of reflection. First and foremost, I mean, we should be grateful. SubhanAllah, it could that we live in relative comfort and ease, especially in the West. And secondly, make dua for our brothers and sisters across the world, and just reflect as far as SubhanAllah, what are the reasons why some of these things are happening? I mean, maybe it's time for us to fix up, and really find ourselves again and connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and make amends. Allah knows best, but Muslims are going through some testing times across the world, subhanallah. May Allah make it easy for us. May Allah make it easy for all of us, inshallah. Okay, let's see. Nihilism leads to extinction soon. Let's hope not, because nihilism is a real problem. You know, for one of the biggest, the Achilles heel of the world that we live in is meaning. You know, it without God, everything is stripped from meaning. There is no meaning behind anything. So, you know, subhanAllah, may Allah guide people, man, because you know, we human beings are creatures driven by meaning. We need meaning, but atheism, naturalism strips you from all meaning. You know, so you can try all you like to sell people this new vision about this material progress, and you know, look, don't get me wrong, subhanallah, you know, the modernity has led to some amazing things. You know, the progress that we've seen from a material perspective, you know, there's been some really good outcomes of it, but what they fail to realize is to address one of the most fundamental needs of the human being, which is meaning. Who are we? Why do we exist? What's the meaning of life? Why are we here? If you don't provide answers to these questions, people will suffer. People are suffering, and no amount of distractions, you know, are gonna alleviate this type of suffering. It's not gonna remove this. You know, people need answers, and you won't find answers to these questions in the absence of Allah, in the absence of God. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Meaninglessness in this, as Siraj says, in this life and in the hereafter. You know, people are realizing, but unfortunately, you know, they're not connecting the dots as they should be connected, and people are distracted as well. And this is why the COVID pandemic, in a way, was the one of the blessings, if you like, was that it gave people an opportunity to sit back and reflect and think about their lives. And you know, I mean, if you look at some of the statistics, brothers and sisters, you know, the rates of depression have gone up, although they don't publicly announce this. But you will see, if you're in the UK, for example, you're driving down and you see billboards and you'll see advertising which says, you know, need someone to speak to, has a helpline number, and all of this type of stuff. People are depressed. You know, people are, and this is the thing, the only thing that was keeping people going without God was worldly distractions. You know, busy life, socializing, drinking, all of this type of stuff, right? Now, when that's taken away from you, then you're given an opportunity to really think about your true state, you know, and then that's where people are realizing, whoa, you know, what is this all about? People are breaking down, you know, so it's an opportunity for people to look into the bigger questions of life, and I think many people have, subhanallah, as well. So may Allah guide them, may Allah guide all of us, inshallah. Okay. Wa alaikum salam, Jordan M. I hope you're well, bro, and things are good, inshallah. Yeah, COVID definitely made, as someone says, COVID definitely made people think within themselves, you know, and I'm sure for even us Muslims, you know, it's really helped us reflect upon our own relationship with Allah, you know, and how there's so much work to be done still. SubhanAllah. So Khalid says, how do atheists nowadays make sense of morality and rationality? So some of these things they just assume axiomatically as if they're true, you know, without providing an account for certain things, or making sense of them. But some of these things they have others type of philosophical perspectives, like consequentialism is one of them when it comes to morality. And they'll have all of these different ideas by which they would say, you know, this is how we make sense of morality as human beings, which are inherently contradictory. There's so many contradictions within these views as well that that they can't plug. Um, but what they're doing essentially is they're going by instinct. What feels right, what feels good, and to an extent that can give you a true outcome. But at the same time, we can see that a lot of things within society today, which would be considered morally repugnant, morally strange, just weird, even 100 years ago in the West, in the UK, are now being normalized and they accepted as fine. And that's because, again, when you remove God, you open up the doors to anything goes, pretty much. This anything goes type of mentality. And slowly and steadily, you know, people will end up justifying, anything could be literally justified, but you wouldn't you wouldn't do it too fast because there are sensitivities, that people are, used to. And there is this, again, there are certain things morally just don't make sense. But people would justify them because under atheism they can. Um, it's just you have to just be, uh, relatively good at giving your reasons as to why something should be allowed, and that's how they do it. So they play with it. It works in their favor, in a way where they could do whatever they like essentially, as long as they can justify it in a reasonable way. When it comes to rationality, again, it's just assumed we're rational, and it is an axiom, because if you don't assume you're rational, you can't engage with anyone in any discussion. So you have to take it as axiomatic. But you can ask the question, we can ask the question as to what best makes sense of this assumption that we have as human beings, that we're rational beings that have the ability to attain truth or come to truth. We may not get there straight away. It may take us a few tries, but we eventually can have the capacity, the faculties to come to truth. What best makes sense of this? Obviously, Islam makes clear sense of this in a very easy way. Allah gave us our rational faculties. He created us so we could reason, so we can first and foremost come to the realization that He is our creator, and acknowledge this rationally and spiritually and from our hearts, and that we could reason about His creation, the world that He created, because His creation is a sign. It's an alama. It's a sign that points back towards Him. So it makes sense from an Islamic perspective. But on atheism, they would argue, well, from a survival perspective, rational faculties make sense from a survival perspective, but they run into problems because many academics have highlighted, atheists as well, they have highlighted, well, you have to assume true beliefs, or the ability to come to true beliefs, is more conducive to survival than false beliefs. Which isn't easy to prove. I mean, you can have false beliefs which can lead you to survival. So hence, therefore, the need for these rational faculties to arise, which can lead you to truth, there's a question mark behind them, and it's problematic from an atheist perspective, from a naturalist perspective. But in day-to-day discourse, they will they'll assume it to be true. We're rational. We have to assume we're rational, which is fine, which you have to grant, because without assuming you're rational, you can't engage. But you can ask what best makes sense of our rational faculties. Atheism, I would argue, doesn't, nor does naturalism. So yeah, it's most of the time they won't delve into this. Again, meaning, why is it that most atheists and naturalists don't like to tackle the question of meaning? They don't, because they don't have answers to these questions. The existentialists, of the 18th and 19th century, I would say, and most of the existentialist philosophers were atheists. Not all of them. Some of them believed in God. Kierkegaard, for example, he was a believer in God, and he was one of the founding fathers of existentialism. But most of them were atheists. But the existentialists did a far better job of firstly acknowledging that there's a problem of meaning, and then trying to provide solutions. But the atheists of today, especially the ones you find online on YouTube, they won't want to tackle this because they don't have answers. They can't find answers. If they're very honest, they would say, well, there is no meaning to life. It's what you make it. It's what you want to make it. And then they will go on, proposing and suggesting certain virtue, or make certain virtuous claims, like, it's about living a fulfilling life. It's about living a good life. It's about doing good, and all of these types of really, really nice sounding ideas. But if you question those ideas, they have no grounding. What does it mean? Why live a good life? What does good mean? Why not live a bad life instead? Why not live a life which is more conducive to your survival, as opposed to being good and selfless and all of these things? There's contradiction there, but they won't. They'll present the case, but won't go into and they would, some of them that have done their research and reading, they will take this from the existentialist philosophers, right? Because some of them promoted these types of perspectives. Jean-Paul Sartre, he really sort of played the card of living a responsible life, although there is no intrinsic meaning to life, and he played off this idea of responsibility and so on. But again, these things sound nice, but how do you now ground these ideas on naturalism and atheism? Even these ideas have no meaning. So it's a vicious cycle, honestly, if you really go into it. But they don't go that deep, They just do with these types of ideas. But what is the ultimate meaning to life? What is the real purpose of life? They have no answers. It's because according to them, if we're being really sort of really morbid about this, brothers and sisters, right? Or not even morbid, if we're being really honest about this, in simple terms, on atheism and naturalism, everything that exists is an accident. We are just accidents, and therefore everything about our lives, is accidental. And therefore, we have no meaning. Accidents don't have a meaning. They don't have a purpose. They just happen, especially according to them. When you spill milk, it wasn't intended. It spilled milk. It was an accident. There's no meaning or purpose behind it from their perspective. Obviously, from our perspective, there's meaning behind everything. But yeah, so for them, it's just this one. We are accidents. Our lives are accidents, and therefore there is no meaning behind our lives. Now, again, going back to without getting too deep into this, the existentialist philosophers tried to take a positive spin on this idea and said, because there is no meaning, it's an open playing field. We are therefore, and this type of God complex comes into it now. We are the ones that write meaning into our lives. We give our lives meaning. We make meaning for ourselves. We make our purpose. And you can see how this type of arrogance would now flow into this type of sentiment and these ideas, that you become your own God and you make your own meaning up. But then I would ask them, well, why make meaning if there is no meaning? Why is meaning important? And that is another paradox for them. And this is something Camus, for example, tried to struggle with, which was that, on one end, our lives are completely meaningless, yet we're beings that just can't help but desire meaning. We want meaning. We seek out meaning. And this perplexity just, it confuses you, and this is the state of human beings. And he dealt with it. We tried to deal with this, and this was a big problem for him. And this was what he referred to as the absurd, the absurdity of life, which is there is no meaning, yet we desire meaning, and we can never bridge that gap. So they can't, at least. SubhanAllah. I'm not. Okay, SubhanAllah. I think that's pretty much all your questions. If you guys have any other questions, let me know, inshallah, and then we'll wrap it up. We're at 48 minutes. I don't want to go over an hour, inshallah. So if there's any other questions you guys have, just chuck them in now. What I would say, just to wrap up, brothers and sisters, SubhanAllah, is we, especially you guys, SubhanAllah, because mashallah, everyone here, I assume, is relatively, somewhat young. You guys are maybe in your 20s, in your 30s, and so on. One thing I'd really recommend is, make, have a vision, honestly, that have something you want to do, for the sake of Allah, and make the most of this opportunity that you have, especially if you live in relative comfort, and things are good. This is a blessing from Allah, and we'll be asked about what we did with the blessing of comfort in our lives. How we used the time that we had. We weren't worried about our lives, or we weren't worried about food, or we weren't worried about shelter, clothing. What did we do with that comfort? Really spend time in rooting Islam in your hearts. What I mean by that is, really become Muslim. And obviously we're all Muslim, alhamdulillah. But become it, meaning let it seep into your hearts. Let it just become a part of you. Let that certainty, envelop you, inshallah. And draw close to Allah and have a really strong connection with Allah. And then really pay attention to trying to leave something behind, as far as something for the sake of Allah, as far as really helping people and those that don't have this message, that don't know this truth. In the da'wah, see where your skills are. What has Allah given you as far as your skill set? What comes naturally to you, and develop that. And use it in the path of Allah. People need help out there, honestly, brothers and sisters. They're really confused. They don't have answers. And yeah, may Allah utilize all of us, inshallah, in His path in some way, shape, or form. And yeah, may Allah bless you all, inshallah. We'll wrap up now. I don't think there's any more questions. Yeah, I don't think there are any questions. I think we've got an atheist online as well. So hopefully, I don't want to call someone an atheist. I'm an atheist. I am an atheist. I don't know, Siraj, if you mean you are a atheist, or an atheist, or you're not, but you're trying to say something else. But if you have any specific questions, you're more than welcome to ask as well. Will Sapiens debate Richard Dawkins in the future? Allah knows best. I don't think Dawkins wants to debate. I think offers have been made to him in the past. I don't think he wants to debate. He just doesn't want to debate, to be honest. All right, guys. Inshallah, may Allah bless you. I'll do more of these lives, inshallah. We could do more Q&A. And we'll get back on some of the videos as well, inshallah. Whenever I feel I've got something of value to share with you guys, inshallah. Jazakallah khair, brothers and sisters. May Allah bless you guys. I'll catch up with you guys next time. And until next time, Assalamu alaikum. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.